Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Sleuth Wood. I am very excited to have beach naturalist and photographer Jen Strongin today. And Jen, I have known you for like a few years, but the funny thing is, like, we only run into each other on the beach.
It is true. That is our meeting place year after year.
I mean, we've never actually like coordinated meeting up. We just keep running into each other, and not even like in Seattle, but like out in the peninsula. And
Yep, it's true.
and I was saying when we first logged in here that I don't recognize you without like all your outdoor, like your hat and your like camera and backpack and.
Yeah. Yes. I was saying to Kelly that I'm usually also looking pretty dirty out there, covered in seaweed and sand and dirt and yeah.
I mean, that's our happy place, being covered in.
Totally. Yeah.
So I want to ask you first. So you are not just like a beach naturalist in general, but you're like specifically your title is a beach naturalist for the Seattle Aquarium, right?
Well, yeah. My official title is Field Program Outreach Specialist, if you must know. But yes, I am a beach naturalist. I help run that program, and I work out in the field as a naturalist.
So you're not a biologist, you're not a scientist, but you know so much, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I want to know, like, how did you come here? I mean, how do you end up as a beach naturalist? And like, because like the program has beach naturalists that just like they're volunteers, right? They go out on the beach.
Yeah, so our program has about 25 folks that are on staff, and then about a little between 250 to 300 volunteers
Wow.
that are on the beach every year. So it's a lot of folks. And I joined up. I started as a volunteer, and at the time I was my child, who's now 16, was much littler. We were spending a lot of time out on the beach with a friend of mine who knew a lot more about the beach and who lives on the beach than I did, and she opened up my eyes to a world that I had no idea even existed, and it was a magical world to me, very exciting. And she mentioned the Beach Naturalists program, and I thought it sounded really great, but my question to her was, well, how can I do that? I don't have a degree. I don't have a background in marine science. And she said, you don't need one to be a volunteer in this program. So that's where it started. So I started off, I was very excited. I got accepted. I started volunteering, and once I started going through all the trainings, I just felt like I was in the place that I really wanted to be. I was meant to be at. So that was in 2014, I think. And after a year of volunteering, they had some openings for staff members, and I applied, and I've been on the staff ever since.
That's fantastic. So you growing up, were you really into nature, or were you more of a late adapter to it all?
I'm a totally late adapter. In fact, when I started doing this, my mom was very surprised because I was the kid who didn't like to get dirty. I was scared of insects. But I enjoyed being outside. My parents weren't super naturey, but they really liked cross-country skiing. I grew up on the East Coast, so in upstate New York, and we would go to Vermont and go ski cross-country skiing in the forest, which was really beautiful. And I just remember really enjoying being outside in that way with my family. But as far as getting down in it, that's a new thing for me as an adult.
It's it's not surprising to me. A number of my guests, like maybe half of them, had the same story. They also came to it late, and it wasn't like some childhood interest and like a lifelong thing, but which I think is just wonderful that so many people have found it, because all the books and everything we do like are aimed at children. Like we have to keep get kids interested in science and nature, and we don't target the adults. And I think we're missing a huge opportunity by not like targeting adults. Can do it. I mean,
adults can do it.
We're not so locked in our ways. We can't like discover nature and like be interested in it again. And I think that's what's so cool about the Beach Naturalist program, because I run into people randomly and they're like, "Oh yeah, the Beach Naturalist," like they know you guys. Like, oh, we were just on the beach and like there was this person talking about octopus and stuff, and
yeah. Yeah, well, and we often have people that send us emails and asking about our program, and if it's just for kids, and it's not, it's for it's for all ages. Curiosity is for all ages, and I think that was at the time that I got involved. I was in the thick of raising a young kid and immersed in wonderful children's books about nature. There are so many, and I feel, and then slowly discovering that like, oh, there are nature books for adults too, and going down rabbit holes and looking at field guides, and just discovering all these things as as an adult is pretty exciting. But you're right, adults need that too. Yeah. Right, adults have that engagement with the world too. People forget.
Right. And I think one of my favorite things about the Beach Naturalists are the night tides. So in the wintertime, our tides are low at night when it's dark. And I think that draws a lot more of the adults to the beach than, I mean, there are kids too, but I see a lot of adults, and like, it's quite a fun experience to go out in the dark onto the beach.
It is, and it's always surprising to me how many folks come out for it. In fact, we've had some nights. So just so folks know that our program offers in the winter. I'll backtrack a little bit. So we have these extreme low tides here in the Pacific Northwest that happen during the day in the spring and summer months, and then there's a bit of a lull in the fall, and then as we move into winter, those extreme low tides are happening again, but they're happening at night. So they're happening from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. and the aquarium, the Beach Naturalist program, will host one or two low tide walks during those nighttime low tides, and they're pretty special and fun. It's cold. Sometimes it's pouring rain, and we still have hundreds of people that come out to the beach with us. And like Kelly said, mostly adults, and they're out there with their headlamps and flashlights and rain gear and bundled up, and spending that time doing very focused, close looking at animals on the beach, and it's pretty amazing.
I wonder if that's like just a special Seattle thing, or beach. Maybe it's because the Beach Naturalists are here, or if it's like Seattle. I mean, we're kind of weird. We love to be outside at night, and I mean in the rain. And I mean, no. Could you have that in like somewhere on the East Coast or even in California? I don't know if you'd have such a number of people.
I don't know. That's a good question. I am curious. I mean, there are other like similar beach, I guess, but it's still Pacific Northwest. We have some other like beach watcher programs around, and I know Harbor Wild Watch over in Gig Harbor, they do evening piers, or where they'll like shine a light off of a dock at night and see what animals come by, and they'll do that no matter what the weather, in the evening. So
that's fun. I met somebody recently who does that up in Anacortes. He drops the light off and sees, and he's got such cool photos and things, and I want to do that now.
Yeah, I totally want to do that now.
That sounds so much fun. Dock night party.
Okay, I'm in. I'll meet you. Let me know. Let me know when. I'll head out with you.
I've completely gone off track of where I was thinking. It happens when you're talking about beaches and stuff.
No.
But the night tides, I wanted to ask about the night tides, because
sure.
I take my black light, which is a whole different experience, using the black light. But there's things you can see at night that are not necessarily out during the day. Like I've seen squid, and you can see them doing their light flashing thing. And then all the things that light up or don't light up, which is also surprising with the black light, like the sea anemones. Mm-hmm. Some of them are like the aggregating ones are like psychedelic.
Yeah.
But then some things like don't light up at all. Like some of the nudibranchs I thought would light up, and they don't do anything at all. So.
Mm-hmm.
But then, can you tell us more about the special experience at night?
Well, one of the one thing about going out at night in the winter time is that the seaweeds, most of the seaweeds have died off. So they have they bloom, and we see lots and lots of seaweeds in the summertime in the intertidal, and that tends to, I mean, it's really important, but it covers up a lot of the beach during the daytime low tide. So you have to look a little bit harder, and there's you're a lot of things are undercover, and in the winter all those seaweeds aren't there, so there's a lot more that can be exposed, which is really fun, makes it a little easier to see things. And there are definitely seasonal changes or seasonal animals that you might see, like the opalescent squid. And although they do mate year round, they are in larger aggregates in like the winter time, so they're up closer to shore, and we tend to see them. And they're also a little bit more nocturnal, so when you're out at low tide in the winter, you might see these beautiful opalescent squid hanging around, which is really cool. There's an animal called a winged sea slug, which you're probably familiar with them, Kelly. They're a nudibranch relative, and they only swim. That you only find them swimming when they're sexually mature, before they start mating, and that's going to be in like September to February. So if you're out at a nighttime low tide, you have a higher chance of seeing spotting one of those animals, because they'll be swimming around rather than just being very sedentary in the bottom of the tide pool. So that's exciting, and bringing a black light too, because a lot of animals do biofluoresce, so they react to that UV light, and it is really fun to see what reacts to your light and what doesn't, and it can be very surprising. And some of those, like Kelly said, we have nudibranchs that seem like they should really biofluoresce, but nothing happens when you shine a light on them. The squid are really fun to see under the black light. Have you done that, Kelly?
I haven't.
Okay, highly recommended. They do. They're beautiful under the black light.
I'm going out. Last year I had foot surgery, so I couldn't get out very well, and during the winter tide. So this year I'm definitely going out again.
Yeah. Another fun animal to see at low tide at night are sea pens, and they don't biofluoresce under your black light, but if you tickle them and then turn your light off, they do bioluminesce, so you'll see them glowing, which is pretty cool too.
That I have seen. That was fun.
Yeah.
And impossible to photograph because it's so subtle. The lights are so tiny. It's like, yeah, it's one of those things you can only experience in person. It's magical that way.
It is, for sure.
So I want to also ask you about, you mentioned photography, and I see, is that a white line diorama behind you on the wall?
It is.
And I'm sure that's one of your photographs, right?
It is, yeah.
And so I know that you're on Instagram, and I'm not on there very much, but whenever I do get on, I'm like, Jen's photography. It's for one, your photography is just amazing. And for two, like, I go to the beach a lot, and you're always posting stuff that, like, blows my mind. Like, I didn't see that, right? I didn't even know that was here. Or, wow. So, like, you really not only highlight, like, the beauty of the marine, tidal zone, but what is there. And, like, it just blows my mind how much you see that I still miss.
That's because I'm out there a lot. I mean, I'm out there for my job with the aquarium. So I'm out at pretty much almost every low, well, not every low tide, but all of those extreme, those good minus tides, I'm out on almost all of them. And especially when you're on the beach with a lot of people, as I often am for work, when you have a lot of eyes working together, things come up that you wouldn't normally see on your own. But it's also, spending lots of time slowing down, looking in one spot very closely, and also getting to know what is there and how to look for it, I think.
Yeah, those are great tips. I love the slowing down and just stopping to look, because, like, people walk past a rock or a tide pool and they just kind of, like, there's no sea star, there's no big crab, there's nothing there. But if you stop and look at it, like, for example, recently I was up in Blaine, and there's just these big mud flats up there, and I was looking under these rocks for nudibranchs, obviously, because that's what I usually look
Of
for.
course.
And I kept finding like this like hordes, like piles and piles of the barnacle eating dorids.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, that's cool. I mean, but they're pretty abundant, especially that time of the year when they're mating.
Yeah.
But I kept looking closer and closer and closer, and then I finally realized that there are these little squishy piles of white goo that were actually a sea slug, the Hansen's egg eaters.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I saw it, every rock I picked up, half of them had a little pile, and then as soon as they were exposed to the light, they all just like dispersed, and they were fast, like for sea slugs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're so tiny, they're so small. And if I hadn't slowed down and like looked really, really closely, because they're almost microscopic, they're so small. But yeah, it just goes to show that, you know, you need to like really stop and investigate.
It's true. And you know, things will catch your eye, and you'll start looking kind of like you said, and then all of a sudden you see something else and more, and you just go down this little rabbit hole of, you know, this little micro universe on a rock that has all of these animals crammed together and things that you just didn't even know were there. That happened this summer with a friend of mine out on the Olympic Peninsula, and we were looking at something and then noticed something else, and it turned out to be a peanut worm. And I don't know if have you seen those out on the...
No, I haven't seen them, but I might not know about them.
Yeah, so peanut worms are just a really bizarro marine worm that we have here. We have lots of bizarro and very cool marine worms, but they are living in the, you know, cracks of or crevices of these rocks out on the peninsula. And we found one and then started looking and realizing how many there were in this one spot. And I feel like I had never seen them before, but I'm sure they're always there, but it just happened to be in that moment that we were, you know, taking that time and looking very closely at something, and then everything else like in that little area comes into focus, and it just kind of blows your mind. So.
Yeah. The British have a term for it. They say it's like something about keep getting your eyes in. Once you get your eyes in for a certain thing, then you see it everywhere.
That's a great expression. I like that. I'm going to use that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the idea of slowing down and looking really closely, because so many of the marine organisms are very small. And then something else you mentioned, or like maybe you didn't mention it, maybe I was just thinking it, the interactions between things. Because like when you look for nudibranchs, you don't just look for nudibranchs, you look for their food source. Right. And I remember when I met you out on the peninsula, and you pointed out a seaweed. It was that thick green one that's really pretty. That I've.
Oh yeah, the codium.
Yes,
yes. The staghorn seaweed.
Yes, and then you mentioned that there was a certain sea slug. I don't think it was a nudibranch. I think it was a sea slug that likes that species of. And I had no idea. And yeah, so just tell us about like the interactions and how important it is to like recognize those connections or learn them.
Oh yeah, well, I mean the connections are everything, right? I mean that's just, and getting to know how animals relate to one another in the intertidal area, and what they like to eat, and where they like to live. I mean, it's pieces of a puzzle that all fit together and can help. You know, it helps me when I'm out there. If I'm looking for a particular animal, I'm looking for clues about. I will follow the trail. I will try and learn about, like Kelly said, what they like to eat, or, you know, what habitat they like to be in. And that helps me to look for them. And, you know, knowing scale is helpful too, because the branched sapsuckers that live on that staghorn seaweed are incredibly small. Like you have to be specifically, like, I mean, they're like the tiniest little blob, you know, when they're out of water, which they are, you know, it's at low tide and they're not in a tide pool. And so you have to really have some idea about how everything interacts with each other in that environment. But the intertidal zone is full of those relationships. I mean, we have, you know, big clusters of gooseneck barnacles out there on the Olympic Peninsula, and they're higher up. They tend to be often higher up on the rocks, and those communities of barnacles create lots of places for other animals to take shelter and find food, and that's where we look for leather limpets, for example. There are another really tiny nudibranch relative that likes to hang out in those communities.
So I've wanted to see those, and I haven't been able to find them yet. So now I know. I know where to look.
Yeah.
Because the guidebooks, like, for one, I have 3 or 4 different guidebooks to Pacific Northwest, and none of them have all the same animals because there's just too many, and the information is just so minimal.
It's so minimal. And
like, there's just some invertebrates that you're not even going to find in a book because there's like the worms, especially the worms. They don't even exist in the books because and some of them haven't even been identified. I mean, described. They don't even have a species name.
Right.
Which is just like overwhelming. My brain just like people go birding and like it's easy. It's like, yeah, that's a dark-eyed junco. That's a red-tailed hawk. But invertebrates, especially marine invertebrates.
There's so many unknowns. My recent thing that I've been trying to get more information about are hydroids. And, hydroids are one of the food sources for a lot of different nudibranchs, which is part of the reason why I'm really intrigued by them. But I'm also intrigued by them because, when I'm taking pictures out there with macro lens, the macro lens is like a portal to another dimension, right? And you are taking these pictures of tiny things, and then you get home and you look at your picture on a bigger screen, and then you realize, like, wait, what is that other thing that's in there? How did I not, notice that before? And for me, a lot of that has been hydroids lately. So, but it's hard. If anybody is listening to this that is an expert on hydroids, please contact me because I have questions. And there's not a lot of information out there. But yeah, and I have so many field guides, and I'm always getting more, just trying to put those pieces together because it is hard. It isn't as straightforward as birds, for sure.
Yeah. And it's not even the small stuff. Like, I was trying to find just a guide to jellyfish because there's so many. I went out to Bremerton, and like hundreds and hundreds of jellyfish, and most of them are pretty small. Mm-hmm. And there's no guide. Like, you think jellyfish would be easy enough to like have a guide for, but there's no guide to just general jellyfish. Like, I don't know what I'm looking at. It's something.
Right. And I would like more information about that too. Yeah, so many tiny unknown jellies out there. So at least unknown to me, and I can't find the information.
Yeah, like they're not in the books, and then like there's lots of different websites where I kind of cobble pieces together and trying to like, this might be a cross jelly, it might be, I don't know, it's something in this other genus, and then you find out that nobody knows.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of unknowns, but that's
that's
part
the fun.
Of what makes it so exciting. So.
I was reading.
The not knowing sometimes is the best part.
It is. It's a lot more magical, I think, to like.
Yeah.
And not only like not knowing, but knowing that you might be looking at a species that nobody's ever described before. It might be like a completely different species, and if you had the time and the effort and the knowledge, you could like describe it and name it yourself.
Right. Yeah. That's always the dream for me, like finding a new species and being able to name it.
That would be so much fun.
Yet to happen.
Yeah. Well, it's bound to at some point, right?
I don't know.
The amount of time that you spend out there. So I wanted to ask you also, when you're not out doing stuff at the beach, what else do you do? Do you do other nature stuff? I know you do. Do you like mushrooms too, right?
Oh my gosh, I love mushrooms. Yeah. So it used to be before I discovered how amazing it was to go out and look on the docks, which I'm kind of obsessed with right now. Thanks to Luann, who you've had on your show. But I love the forest and I love mushrooms. So once beach season was over and the low tides were, done for the summer, I would be heading into the woods to look for mushrooms. And really, that's my interest in mushrooms. Really, just started off as a visual, artistic interest, but again, they're one of those organisms that I find really overwhelming in a way to learn about. There's so much to learn and still a lot that people don't know. And, mushrooms can look really different depending on what stage of their, they're fruiting therein or decomposition. It's just they're so hard to identify, but I love learning about them, and I really love photographing them. So I do spend a lot of time in the forest in the fall and the winter.
Which is good timing since, the low tide season's over, right into the mushroom season.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I do the same thing, but with slime molds. I'm like, okay, there's no more low tides, but it's slime mold season now, so I can go out. Have you gotten to slime molds yet, though?
Oh, totally. Okay. Yeah. In fact, I love slime molds. They're also fascinating, and I love photographing them too. But I feel like I haven't been to the woods for a while, so I'm looking forward to getting back out there.
Yeah, it's been dry. I had a guest on early on, Carrie. She wrote a slime mold book. So there's an episode all about slime molds if anybody wants to watch that one too. I had to find a mushroom person next.
Excellent. That is one of those things where, I've been out in the woods and, down in it, in the dirt, on my belly, like in a weird position, taking a picture of something, and somebody on the trail walks by and they're like, "What are you looking at?" It's like, "Oh, I'm looking at this really cool slime mold." Be like, "Oh, okay, cool." No, just like what?
That's the exact reaction I get too.
Sounds weird.
Frequently. There's been times
I tried. Sorry, go ahead.
There's been times where I've been like squatting behind a log and people look at me weird, and I'm like, it probably looks like I'm trying to go pee or something. It's completely normal, I promise.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I think that those type of things happen out on the dock too, where so many comments like, "Did you lose something? Are you okay?" Yeah.
There was one time, I think Luann and I were hanging over the docks, and this little girl and this guy walked by because they had been on a boat and they were walking up the docks. This little girl's like, "What are they doing, Daddy?" And Luann and I were both like so immersed in whatever we were looking at, we didn't answer. Like, there's just this little girl. "What are they doing?" And the dad's like, keep walking. So let's talk about that because that keeps coming up. Can you tell us we had Luann on, so anybody who's watched the episode with Luann knows about dock fouling already, but there's probably a lot of people who haven't heard of that before. So why do we hang off the edge of docks?
We hang off the edge of docks because a lot of animals there's a lot of animals that will settle on floating docks and marinas, and it tends to be and seaweeds. So seaweeds survive really well there, and a lot of animals like mussels and barnacles, and the term dock fouling is usually a term that is a negative term for the settling of these animals on things like boats, especially, which can be a really huge pain and inconvenience for boaters to have these animals on their boats, but they settle on these hard surfaces, and it provides it's like going to an outdoor aquarium when you go to the dock and you can lie on your belly and look down off the side of the dock and see all kinds of amazing things like feather duster tube worms, and you can see all kinds of jellyfish and some mollusks, limpets, chitons, anemones, and most importantly, nudibranchs. So yeah, but it's and you can do it. It's not dependent. When you're out tide pooling, it's very the time is limited to get out there during low tide, right? You have a window of time that's usually a few hours to get out there, and it's only at certain times of the year that we have the really beautiful minus tides. But with the docks, you can go out any time of year. It's not dependent on the tides at all. So it's a great way to go out and observe marine life if you have the ability to lie on your belly that way. It's kind of hard it's a little hard on your neck and your elbows and your knees. So
and your chest, like I feel like I get bruised here when I'm done too. Yeah, and indigestion.
Yeah.
Don't eat a heavy meal before you go hang off because it might come back. Yeah, it's fascinating. I do, and I'm like, I could spend hours doing it. I do spend hours doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like and you can see fish. There's lots of fish too, because there's fish like in the
Lots of
marina,
fish.
and there's also fish that hide in the seaweeds and the hydroids and everything too.
There are. Yeah. So I spend quite a bit of time on San Juan Island, and there for the past couple of years I've been visiting the same marina, and in the kelp that is there. I've regularly seen the sailfin sculpins, which they're just one of my. I'm very invertebrate focused generally, but there are some fish here in the Pacific Northwest that really captivate me, and the sailfin sculpins are one of those species. So I'm always excited to see them. But I've seen pipefish there too, which has been really cool. And pipefish, for anybody doesn't know, they're related to seahorses. They're really they're just these long, skinny, beautiful green fish.
I don't think I've seen those in the docks before. Of course, most of the fish I don't really know what they are anyway. So, like, yeah, it's a fish. It's a fish.
Right.
What I like the best is when I'm like digging through the seaweed and then something tickles my hand. I'm like, yeah, that was a fish. Sometimes you grab them accidentally because they're hidden in there.
Yeah. I find there's lots of shrimp too that do that.
The shrimp, especially the big ones, and occasionally the kelp crabs.
Yes. Yep.
Like, sorry, I didn't mean to grab you. I'm just glad that the Dungeness crabs don't hang out up there.
Yeah.
That's not something I want to grab accidentally.
I think one of the coolest crabs I've seen when I've been on the docks is I saw a juvenile heart crab. Have you ever seen a heart crab?
I don't think I have.
You'll have to Google a picture of them. They're really beautiful crabs, and I just had an assumption that they are like deeper living crabs. So it was really a surprise to see a juvenile off the, hanging out in the seaweed on the docks. So kind of exciting. Never know what you'll see.
Right, and I think that's part of the excitement too, because I don't think there's a lot of people that study what grows on docks and what lives on docks, especially like not just like what settles on them. We know barnacles and mussels do, but like different different periods of the life cycle. Because like Luann said that she sees nudibranchs that are supposed to be like deeper, but then at certain, like maybe when they're juvenile or they're younger, they are often found on the docks. Well, they're not supposed to be, but of course they are supposed to be because that's what they do.
Right. Yep, exactly.
So we can find a lot more discoveries too, I think, on the docks.
Yeah, it does seem that way. I feel like I'm always surprised at how much diversity I see when I'm on the dock, and how it changes throughout the seasons too is always really interesting. And it's surprising that even in the winter there may not be as much to see, but there's still things going on. So,
and it really varies from dock to dock too. Like you can go to 5 different docks in Puget Sound and they'll all have different things.
It's true. Yeah.
I find fascinating. I mean,
yeah.
Why are like the hooded nudibranchs? I've only ever seen them at Deception Pass, never down here. But I know that they're in Tacoma too. But like, why are they not on? I've never seen them in the docks that I go to in Tacoma.
Well, have I? I think I did. I think I did see them once. I saw maybe one in Tacoma, and then I saw at least one downtown in Elliott Bay. So
wow.
I think they're it's one of those things, just timing maybe, or I don't know. I'm sure they're around a lot more than you might think. So
yeah, I really wanted to see one because I was getting this tattoo a year or 2 ago. And I have like 7 or 8 species of nudibranchs on there, but I only put the ones that I've seen. And I really wanted to get the hooded nudibranch before I got my tattoo, so I was scouring iNaturalist trying to figure out where they were and what time of the year they were. And, like everybody sees them in the autumn, like November seems to be. I think it was November and so I went up. I saw one like days before my tattoo appointment. So now I've got one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there it is.
I love it. Well, a tip for you if you're tide pooling and you want to see them, and maybe you already know this, but Seahurst Beach, pretty regularly they start showing up in August there.
Oh, okay. And that's close to me.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So
I'm going.
I recommend going to Seahurst Beach in August, when we have minus tides, because you will definitely see some.
Perfect. Good to know. The other thing I've been always looking for, and I still have not found, despite hours and hours of combing through eelgrass, are the Taylor sea hare.
What?
I still haven't found one.
Oh my goodness. Well, next season, next summer, you'll have to meet me out at and again, I'm sure that they are all over the sound, but it's so interesting. I've never seen them at Constellation or Charles Ritchie Viewpoint over in West Seattle, which is the beach that I tend to spend a lot of time at here in Seattle. But I bet they must be out there. But I've seen them at they're regularly at Carkeek Beach up north, and Golden Gardens. There's so many at Golden Gardens this year. So,
of course there were. I was at Fauntleroy, and there was some guys like, yeah, I just saw one, and Luann and I were like digging through the eelgrass, like we couldn't find a single thing. We found a dendronotus, but no sea hare.
No sea hares, yeah.
And then I went up to Blaine, and I was digging, like I just sat there for hours digging through this eelgrass, and I found a bajillion of the bubble snails.
Oh yeah,
they were everywhere, but not a single sea hare.
This is another thing. Like, there were so many bubble snails this year on our Seattle beaches.
Huh.
A lot of reports from our naturalists when we were out there, and I saw tons. And the dock that I go to on San Juan Island had so many last year at this time of year, but this year there were none. I didn't see a single one. Didn't see any eggs. Didn't see any evidence that they were around. So, but we had tons in a place that I don't normally see them. So, I don't know.
Mysteries.
So I have mysteries.
There's so much to. Oh, this is fascinating. So much fun. It's like sometimes I think like, oh, I was just out there, like the last low tide. What am I going to see this time? I'm not really going to go. And then I always like, no, that's stupid. Don't think like that, because there's always something different.
Yeah.
Just always.
There's always something. There's always something different to see. That's for sure.
And it's fun to go, like I go to the Fauntleroy docks a lot, and it's fun to look back at my photos, because since the low tides coincide to more or less the same time each year, it's fun to look at like January 1st this year, and then last year, and then the year before that, and see what I saw. And like some years there's tons of the horned nudibranchs, and then some years there's like none at all, like at the same time of year. Why?
Yeah. Yep.
It's just a mystery.
It's a mystery.
So I wanted to ask you also if you wanted to share with people who are watching any good tips. Like you already mentioned slowing down and looking at small things, but like when you go to the beach, what can you do to really like see and find the cool stuff? Which, I mean, it's all cool, but
in order to find, well, I feel like one thing is to invest in a field guide of some kind for wherever you're going, and take a look at what's there, or go on to iNaturalist and do a search for the beach that you're going to and see what people have been seeing or seen in the past, because that can give you some idea of how to start tuning your eyes into what might be out there. But going really slowly, knowing what sort of habitat the animals that you might be interested in seeing like to live in, and what types of foods that they like to eat, that they might be near. And also, I mean, seasonality too, what time of year is it? And if it's during the day, the summertime low tides, it might be a different thing you're looking for than if you're going out there at night, for sure. But I think having an idea of some of the things that you might find is a really good place to start for, something in mind that you want to look for when you're out there.
Otherwise it's too overwhelming.
Yeah. Or going out with somebody who who might be able to show you some things and, get your vision focused in on different animals. Going out when the beach naturalists are out there during the summer is also a great thing to do, because they will help you be able to see things that you might not have noticed were there. There are a lot of things on the beach that look like goo, or a weird blob, or dirt, or maybe it looks like an old tire plunger, just things that you just wouldn't have any idea that it's an animal or eggs of an animal. So it's helpful to have somebody show you the way.
It is. The beach naturalists are great for that.
Yeah.
And I also I usually avoid, especially in nature, I usually avoid anything that has a crowd. But I will go to the beach naturalist low tides because, like you mentioned earlier, there's so many eyes. So if you're just walking along the beach and keep your ears open and you hear somebody squealing or screaming really loud, you go that direction because there's an octopus or something else really interesting.
Right. Yes, that is another good. That's another good tip. If it's a busy day, keeping your ears open as well as your eyes for people getting excited about something. A lot of times, people are getting excited. Like kids will get really excited. There'll be a whole group, and you go over there, and they're looking at shore crabs, which are very exciting when you're a little kid. I guess when you're an adult too. I should, step it back a little. Like shore crabs are exciting too, but it's not going to might not be an octopus, or something really rare to see on the beach.
Right.
So, yeah.
And also, you mentioned earlier about getting down and dirty, so getting really low is often very helpful. I remember one of the beach naturalists when I first started going said, think like a kid. They're getting down, they're getting low. They're getting on their hands and knees and a lot of things hide under the rocks.
They do. A lot of things hide under the rocks. So I guess another thing too is I always bring a flashlight with me, even during the day, because those overhangs of the rocks are really dark, and it's hard to see what's underneath there without having some extra light. I have a volunteer that works for us, and he brings a CD, and he reflects light with his CD into rocks, into the crevices of rocks, instead of having a flashlight.
That's clever.
It works surprisingly well. So there's all kinds of, you don't need any kind of fancy equipment. Just something to reflect light or shine light in there. If you're a biker, you have a little bike light or headlamp or whatever, you can use that. It works really good. But one thing, there's part of my job with the beach naturalists. We're really trying to help folks be better, or be good beach stewards, be good visitors when we're out there, because it isn't our home. It's the home of all these, animals that live there. And we try and explore as gently as we can, trying to observe animals where they are for the most part. Stepping gently when you're out there, which is also, that helps you to slow down when you're looking for things. And even though lots of really cool animals live under rocks, trying not to turn over rocks that are hard to turn over. If you can't turn it over with one hand very gently and put it back the way it was, then it's probably not a good one to turn over, because then you're, it's hard not to squish animals when you've turned over a giant boulder that required 4 people to turn it. And then, and you get to see a lot of cool things, but then you're disturbing this home and possibly, killing some animals along the way. So we don't want to do that when we're out there. For sure.
No, I think I remember clearly you walking along and getting upset because somebody had left a rock upside down. There's a rock there is, it might not seem like it, but there is a right side up and a wrong side up, and the things that are sessile that have attached to the rock, they can't live up like that. So put the rocks back.
They can't. Yeah, they can't. It is true. Rocks on the beach have tops and bottoms, and there are some animals that really they're on the underside of the rock for a reason. They can't, they don't want to be exposed to the light. They don't want to be exposed to predators. We have these amazing fish in the intertidal, the plainfin midshipmen. Have you seen those, Kelly? Yeah. And we, get to see them and their eggs in the summertime a lot because of people turning over rocks, and it's great. It's very exciting for folks to see these fish there. They're usually higher up in the intertidal. But the female will lay her eggs on the underside of the rock, and then the male fertilizes them, and the female takes off, and the male stays with the eggs until they hatch out. And the eggs are on the underside of that rock for a reason, because that protects them from predators, and it protects the dad from predators as well. So, turning those big rocks over and seeing all the eggs and the fish, as exciting as it is, might mean that those eggs won't survive. So just try and be gentle explorers, right, when we're out there.
Think of the fish.
Think of the fish, the baby fish. Yeah.
Don't be a fish murderer.
It's hard though, right? Because you want people to connect, right, with the environment, and we all do that in different ways, right? And especially for younger kids when they're out there. When you're a kid, you just explore the world in a much different kind of way, and that's all right.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, because it is a fine balance, and I know there's a book by it's about raising a wild child, basically, and the author basically said, like, nature can take it, like, let the kids explore, let them poke things, let them pick them up. It shouldn't be like a total hands off, because then they won't care. But at the same time, when you're living in a city, and the beach in Seattle is heavily there's lots of foot traffic, and it can take it to some extent, but like there's got to be that like balance between exploring and making people care about it, and like not demolishing it in the process.
Right. Yeah, I think it is a fine balance, and I think that person is right. That is how kids find out about the world, is by touching things and seeing how things work, taking things apart, but I think as adults out there, we can just do our best to model how we hope that they will interact with the beach in the future, right? It doesn't have to be anything, like, I wouldn't want to make any kid feel shamed or bad about like picking up a really big rock, even though generally I don't want people to do that. But if some kid is picking up big rocks and like looking underneath and seeing what's underneath there and being excited about it, that's definitely not a vibe you want to kill. So, but as adults, we can model, right, not picking up the big rocks, or talking about how the rocks have tops and bottoms, and the animals have homes, and how we can be gentle.
Yeah, I think things that I've noticed when I'm out there, especially if I see kids doing something that's like, don't do that, is like telling them that they can be stewards, that like they're protectors of those crabs. They're the protectors. They're like,
right.
They need the kids to be the heroes, and giving them that role, and I think they take that very seriously too.
They do for sure.
I wanted to say also, I had this vivid memory of being down. Speaking of kids, being down at the beach, I was looking for nudibranchs, like, because that's my favorite thing. And there was this little boy there, and his mom was just sitting there patiently, and he had a bucket and stuff, and he was just looking at a sea star, and like, that's cool. And then the beach naturalist came over and asked, like, do you need to know anything about the sea star? And he's like, nope, I already know everything about him. And the mom said he's complete. I don't know. He had to have been like 5, 6, 7 maybe. And she said he's obsessed with them, and like he keeps track of the low tides and tells her when it's time to go to the beach to look for sea stars. And like he had his books, and he knew all the species, and he just went there and sat with the sea stars, which I almost cried, because it was the cutest thing ever.
That is super cute.
Yeah, nope, he doesn't need to know anything about it. He's already
It's so cute. Kids are the best.
Yeah, and some of them, like there was one time I saw kids just smashing the crabs with rocks. I'm like, don't do that. And then but then there's the kid who's just communing with the sea stars because he loves them.
Yeah.
Like, you never know what you're gonna find on the beach, and it's not just the animals; it's like the human behaviors. And
it's true. It's true.
It's very sweet and very cute.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like, I just love the Beach Naturalist program, because part of me is like, God, there's too many people on the beach, go away. And part of me is like, no, this is great because they're like, because there's that kid who's like loves the sea stars, and who knows what he's going to grow up to do. And yes, I mean, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, it's fun. We do have youth volunteers in the beach naturalist program, and there's a couple now that I've seen. They were, younger when I first started, and now they're not in the program anymore because they're off to college. And there's a couple of them they're both in college for marine biology or ecology degrees now. So yeah, it's fun to see that enthusiasm and interest in kids and see that passion.
Yep. And I know it's like not just like learning about what lives there, but also inspiring. I'm sure like there's artists. Well, I know my tattoo artist goes to the beach and gets inspired too, because she's the one who did all this.
Uh-huh.
So it's more than just like just learning about it and like caring about it, but like inspiring people to just do what they will with it.
It's true. It can inspire you in many ways, right? It can be an artistic inspiration. It can be a conservation inspiration. It can be, I know for some, for some folks, it's just a really kind of meditative, healing sort of inspiration to be out there and just be out at low tide or walk on the beach and look for what's there. So there's all different ways that people connect to it for sure.
And we're so lucky in Seattle. There's not many other cities, big cities, that have a beach or multiple beaches where we can go see all the cool things for low tide, like octopus and, all the gooey ducks and everything. But also like have the chance of seeing orcas and harbor porpoises and seals and everything else out there too. We're very lucky.
We are very lucky, and I think about that a lot when I'm down at the Sculpture Park Beach. I don't know if you've had a chance to go spend low tide down there, but it's a really interesting beach, but it's situated right on the edge of our very urban environment. And here, there you are with the sea stars and the shore crabs and the anemones, and then look, a whale just went by. Oh wait, there's some porpoises, and then oh wait, there's that. Remember that day that the club hook squid washed up on this beach or whatever it is, like all kinds of weird things happen, and you're in the city, but you're out in nature, and it's kind of incredible. We're very, very fortunate.
Yeah, that's a fun beach for anybody who doesn't know. That was downtown Seattle is very seawalled, but that was a reconstructed, like a whole project where they tore down the seawall and regraded it and kind of made a whole new habitat, right?
They did, yeah. So they and the effort to restore this beach was primarily around salmon restoration, salmon habitat. So they really did a lot of work. There are native plants there now, and they restored the beach back to its more natural state. They built something called a habitat bench there to really encourage things like animals like invertebrates to be there and seaweeds and things. And it's part of a pathway that out migrating juvenile salmon will use along the waterfront on their way out to the ocean. And salmon face a lot of challenges when they make that journey. So they did this in order to help them have better passage on their way out. So it's kind of an amazing. It's a really amazing beach. There's folks that have been monitoring it for like 10 or plus years now, and just keeping track of what invertebrates and are there. There's people that monitor the salmon that come through, so it's pretty cool.
That's neat. It's fun when they actually monitor it and like restore it from like scratch, and then keep monitoring to see what happens and how it changes and everything.
Yeah.
I hear my dog barking. Quiet. So I wanted to ask you, and this might be a gotcha question. So what are your favorite things to find? Like, what gets you most excited? I mean, you're supposed to like everything, but you must have favorites.
I like to just my favorite things now are just things that are new. I guess animals that I've never seen before is always exciting to me. But I don't know. I love seeing giant Pacific octopuses. It's one of my favorite animals to see and makes me feel very verklempt every time. Especially, I'm not a diver, so I don't have that regular opportunity to go, spend time underwater and see them. They're not an animal that we see really here in the intertidal in Seattle, but on the Olympic Peninsula, there's more. There's a greater chance of seeing them in the intertidal zone. So that's always exciting to me. Nudibranchs I love nudibranchs. So I'm always looking for them and looking for maybe one that I haven't seen before, but the branch sapsucker that lives on that codium seaweed, that's always exciting. I always look for them, and the excitement never wears off anytime I see one of those. So that's pretty cool. Trying to think of other animals I really love to see. One, I think it's just things I haven't seen before. I saw a pinto abalone on the Olympic coast, and for anybody that doesn't know, like that is a endangered species here in the Pacific Northwest. So seeing one in the intertidal is pretty uncommon. So getting to see one that was a good size and looking really well and healthy was very exciting to me. Yeah.
So one last question, because we're almost out of time. Do you have any like super memorable experiences from all your time on the beach? So the things that you always tell people about or that stick out.
Well, I do tell people my giant Pacific octopus story a lot. How I went out to I've been going to the same spot out on the Olympic Peninsula for like nine years now, but I had been going out there for, at the time, maybe 6 years or 7 years, and every time I was out there, somebody would say, "Oh, there's an octopus over there. I just saw one over there," and I've never seen one, and go there, with the intention of finding one, at one time, never seeing them, and I got talking to these people on the beach. I don't know how. We were probably looking at something small together, and we were chatting, and I was telling them my sad story, how I never see a giant Pacific octopus. And the next day, we were both out there, and I heard somebody calling my name, which was really weird. And I looked up, and it was this person that I had met, and her dad. She's waving me down. And I went over there, and they had found an octopus, a giant Pacific octopus, and that was the first one I'd ever saw. And there were just the three of us looking at it, and it was in this beautiful pool, and it could see the octopus taking in water over its gills and exhaling through its siphon, and it was a very magical moment. So I tell that story a lot. Yeah, that was particularly memorable for me. Yeah, I don't know. I think the first time I saw a winged sea slug was another really memorable moment for me. It was at night, and it was during one of our beach naturalist nighttime walks, and so there were a bunch of people around, but we were in this just standing in the sandy area of a shallow pool of water, and something caught my eye, and it was pretty magical to see this animal, just like a graceful ballerina, really, just like flying through the water. So
I think I was there.
You may have been there.
Because I know the first time I saw one was when you found one on the beach, and then you had it in a little container, and it was swimming around in the container.
That was probably, that may have been it.
It's like
you were there for my magic moment.
I didn't know it was your first one, so it was my first one too then. That's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I love it. Those moments, like you remember it, they're so memorable. You don't forget them.
Yes, it's true. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That was so much fun. I can't believe the hour's over already.
That went by fast.
Yeah. It always does when we're talking about beaches and marine stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go. I'll set up a party for a dock fouling at night.
I am 100% in for that. So keep me posted.
Yeah. All right. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Kelly.
And I'm sure I'll see you again on the beach.
Yeah, I'll see you out in the wild.
Bye.
Bye.